Everybody inside the Pittsburgh Steelers world keeps circling back to the same question, and honestly, it is becoming impossible to ignore now. What happens if Aaron Rodgers never becomes the Steelers quarterback in 2026? The organization still expects him to be there. Rodgers himself reportedly still views Pittsburgh as a real possibility. But behind closed doors, there is clearly another conversation happening, because the Steelers are not the type of franchise that walks into a season without contingency plans. And the deeper you look into this situation, the more it feels like Pittsburgh may already be preparing for a quarterback battle that could completely reshape the future of the franchise. The interesting part is that most fans already assume the answer is simple. They believe Will Howard would immediately take over. They believe the Steelers drafted him, developed him quietly behind the scenes, and now they are simply waiting for the right moment to hand him the keys. There is definitely truth to that idea, because inside the building, Howard has reportedly impressed people with his energy, his confidence, and the way teammates respond to him. Even last season, there was growing chatter around the coaching staff that Howard carried himself like someone who belonged in an NFL quarterback room. Players noticed it. Coaches noticed it. The front office noticed it. Before we continue, I want to know your opinion. What do you think about this? Write in the comments, and don't forget to click the like button if you're a true fan. Now, let's continue. But there is a major difference between being liked internally and being handed the starting quarterback job for one of the most demanding organizations in football. That is where things become fascinating for Pittsburgh. The Steelers might give Will Howard the first opportunity, but there is almost no chance they would give him the only opportunity. That changes the entire conversation. If Aaron Rodgers is gone, Howard probably opens minicamp as the first quarterback taking snaps with the starters. He would likely enter training camp with the early edge because familiarity matters. The locker room already knows him. Coaches already know how he responds to pressure situations. The offensive staff already understands what concepts fit his strengths. There is comfort there, and comfort matters when an organization suddenly has uncertainty at quarterback. But comfort alone does not determine the future of a franchise. Upside does. Potential does. And that is exactly why Drew Aller becomes such a massive factor in this conversation. The Steelers would not spend significant draft capital on a quarterback like Aller just to completely ignore him 1 year later. That simply is not how NFL organizations operate. If Rodgers is not in Pittsburgh, then this immediately becomes a real competition between Howard and Aller, and the Steelers would absolutely explore both possibilities before making a decision. What makes this battle so intriguing is that Howard and Aller represent two completely different paths for the franchise. Howard feels like the safer option, the more stable option, the quarterback who might avoid mistakes, manage games correctly, and give Pittsburgh a reliable floor offensively. There is value in that, especially for a roster that still believes it can compete immediately. The Steelers are not rebuilding. They never operate with that mindset. They believe they can reach the playoffs every season, and they build their roster accordingly. But Aller represents something else entirely. He represents ceiling. He represents the possibility of developing into a true franchise-changing quarterback if everything clicks. The Steelers reportedly see the traits. The arm strength jumps off the screen. The physical tools are impossible to ignore. His size, his ability to push the football vertically, and the natural velocity he generates all fit what NFL evaluators dream about when projecting quarterbacks long-term. There are throws Aller can make that very few quarterbacks can consistently attempt. And that creates a difficult decision for Pittsburgh because organizations constantly wrestle with one question when developing young quarterbacks. Do you trust the safer player who gives you steadiness right now? Or do you invest in the player with elite tools who could eventually become something much bigger? That is where Mike McCarthy's influence could become enormous in this situation. If McCarthy truly believes Aller has the potential to develop into a top-level quarterback, then Pittsburgh may be willing to endure some growing pains early in order to unlock that upside later. Coaches think this way all the time. They look beyond September. They imagine what a player could become by December, January, or even 2 years from now. And if the Steelers' coaching staff believes Howard's ceiling is lower, even if his current floor is safer, then the competition suddenly becomes far more complicated than fans realize. Because in the NFL, organizations do not just evaluate who helps them survive right now. They evaluate who gives them the best chance to become dangerous long-term. The reality is that Pittsburgh understands how difficult this entire process truly is. Fans love to dream about late-round quarterbacks becoming stars, but front offices study the actual numbers constantly. The statistics surrounding third-round and sixth-round quarterbacks are brutal. Most never become long-term franchise players. Most never even secure extended starting careers. The Steelers know this better than anyone because they analyze these probabilities every single year. That does not mean Howard cannot succeed. It does not mean Aller cannot emerge. But Pittsburgh is likely approaching this situation with far more realism than the fan base. Inside the organization, they understand the odds. They know how rare it is for quarterbacks selected outside the first round to develop into elite long-term answers. That realism is probably driving a huge portion of their current thinking. And then there is the name that refuses to disappear from this conversation, no matter how many people try to move past it. Mason Rudolph. A lot of fans would probably laugh at the idea initially, but internally, the Steelers almost certainly view Rudolph as part of the emergency structure if Rodgers is not there, and the young quarterbacks are not ready. That does not mean Rudolph is the preferred answer. It does not mean Pittsburgh wants him starting a full season. But stability matters in the NFL, especially for a coaching staff trying to remain competitive while developing younger talent. Rudolph already knows the organization. He knows the environment. He knows the pressure that comes with playing quarterback in Pittsburgh. More importantly, the Steelers know exactly what he is. There is comfort in predictability when a team suddenly enters uncertain territory. If Howard struggles early and Aller clearly needs developmental time, Pittsburgh could absolutely pivot toward Rudolph as a temporary stabilizer, someone who can manage games, avoid catastrophic mistakes, and keep the season from completely unraveling while the younger quarterbacks continue developing behind the scenes. And honestly, that possibility says a lot about how seriously the Steelers are preparing for every scenario. They are not locking themselves into one answer. They are building layers of protection around the quarterback position because they understand how quickly seasons collapse when there is no backup strategy. The fascinating part is that all three quarterbacks would offer completely different identities for the offense. Howard gives you steadiness and structure. Aller gives you explosive upside and developmental potential. Rudolph gives you experience and short-term stability. None of them perfectly replace Aaron Rodgers, but each path would completely change the direction of the franchise moving forward. And maybe that is why this story has become so compelling around Pittsburgh right now. Because for the first time in a long time, it feels like the Steelers may genuinely be approaching a crossroads at quarterback again. Not just for one season, but potentially for the next decade. The organization continues waiting on Aaron Rodgers, but behind that patience is a franchise quietly preparing for every possible outcome. If Rodgers arrives, the Steelers believe they can compete immediately with a veteran leader. If he does not, Pittsburgh suddenly enters one of the most important quarterback evaluations the franchise has faced in years. And the scary part for the rest of the AFC North is that sometimes uncertainty creates opportunity. Sometimes quarterback battles reveal players nobody expected to emerge. Sometimes franchises discover their future only after their original plan falls apart. And now the pressure starts building for the Pittsburgh Steelers because, one way or another, this franchise is getting closer to a massive decision at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers could still walk through that door and completely change everything. But if he does not, the Steelers are going to have to decide whether they trust the steady approach of Will Howard, the upside of Drew Aller, or the experience of Mason Rudolph to lead this team into the future. And honestly, that decision could define the next era of Steelers football. So now I want to hear from you. If Aaron Rodgers never becomes the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are you choosing to lead this team in 2026? And why? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this debate is only getting started. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, leave a like on the video, and click the video that's on your screen right now for more Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. The latest Steelers updates and exclusive coverage are right here, and you do not want to miss what comes next.